and welcome everyone to our session, Open Pedagogy as Mentorship, Cultivating an OER Creation Experience for Undergraduate Students. I'm Sarah Stevenson, the Librarian for Education at the Vanderbilt University's Peabody Library, and I'm joined by my colleague Emily Bush, the Librarian for Instruction and Digital Learning at Vanderbilt Libraries, and we're also joined by our student Jorie Fawcett, who is a junior secondary education major. At Vanderbilt Libraries, we have a Buchanan Fellowship program, which allows undergraduates to apply to participate in experiential learning opportunities that are led by librarians and faculty partners. The Buchanan Library Fellowship program supports hands-on student learning opportunities that build desirable skills and deepen students' understanding of resources and services at the Vanderbilt Libraries. With a focus on undergraduate instruction, the program connects faculty and professional librarians with students to work on experiential library projects and present their work at the end of the fellowship. Fellows learn new skills, earn a stipend, and participate in experiences that add to their expertise and resumes. Projects may involve curating a physical or online exhibition, creating multimedia such as podcasts and videos, or contributing new research to academia via multiple outlets such as a research poster, academic databases, writing an article, etc. In the fall 2022, Emily approached me saying, hey, I have an idea for a project. And so bringing together her background and interest in media literacy and my experience with working with pre-service teachers and education research, we developed this fellowship for the spring of 2023. We envisioned a space where students would explore media literacy topics of interest and create an open educational resource that could be used in secondary education. Their projects would be grounded in their own primary and secondary research, and we really wanted to allow for their creativity to show up in their module development. So creating slides, videos, whatever they wanted to make, the sky was the limit. So with that little background, we wanted to share where we're heading today. We will discuss the philosophical underpinnings of the fellowship development, defining open pedagogy in this context, as well as peer-to-peer learning. We will also share our process for setting up the fellowship structure, including connections to schools, developing our content, deliverable criteria, and our syllabi. We'll share how it went, so what were some of our steps for implementation and how it went. And then we'll provide a preview of the OER materials that our students submitted. And finally, one of our fellows we're lucky to have here today will be able to share about their project and reflect on her experience as a fellow. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily to share with you about the foundations of our project.
Thanks, Sarah. We grounded the fellowship in open pedagogy and created a peer-to-peer model of media literacy. This is the fellowship description that was advertised out to students. Although we were open to students choosing any topic under the very broad umbrella of media literacy, we were hopeful that students would choose topics relating closely to social media. As relatively self-aware people, Sarah and I knew we were somewhat out of touch with how young people use social media. However, we both know the literacies around evaluating and consuming information through social media are urgently needed. So we were happy to find that all of the fellows gravitated towards topics, educating their peers about varying aspects of social media usage. Sarah will talk more about their projects in just a minute. Part of the inspiration for the fellowship was that we thought, knowing that the materials were created by slightly older, slightly wiser college students would be a more powerful way to convey the lessons than us somewhat out of touch librarians pretending that we know what it's like to be in high school. If you're unfamiliar, open pedagogy is the practice of engaging students as the creators of information rather than passive consumers. Our hope was that in using open pedagogy, we would intrinsically motivate students and help create buy-in. Sarah and I acted as mentors guiding rather than leading students as instructors. We set the fellowship up using a hybrid independent study model. We knew from experience that it's incredibly difficult to get even just 4 students together in the same room at the same time. For that reason, we met just twice over the course of 12 weeks. The course was set up through Brightspace with regular check-ins required along the way. Sarah and I mentored 2 students each. We held a welcome session at the beginning of the fellowship to set expectations and outline how the fellowship was structured. We had one other group meeting toward the end where students did a peer review of each other's materials. To keep students on track, we created benchmarks they should meet throughout the fellowship. Those included selecting a topic, establishing learning outcomes, choosing a Creative Commons license, developing an action plan, creating a lesson plan, and then creating that final learning module and posting it to the OER Commons. We included a range of readings on topics we thought students might not be familiar with, things like accessibility, universal design, and the Creative Commons licensing. In addition, we discovered that students like more examples, so we added in along the way some lesson plans and examples of OER modules. We made sure to make the due dates easy to find, including them in multiple locations, including Brightspace and on the syllabus. In addition to the final deliverable of the OER learning modules, students were asked to turn in short reflections about the fellowship experience. This was meant to be provided back to the donor that provides the grant that makes the fellowships possible, but it's also an essential piece of experiential learning. The questions that students were prompted with are: what skills did you learn this semester, and how has your view of the library changed? The fellowship was grounded in exploration and research, with that final deliverable that was posted to the Vanderbilt Library's OER Commons group, which is part of the larger Tennessee Open Education Hub on the OER Commons. Now Sarah will share what our students created.
Thanks, Emily. So now I'm going to share a little bit about the students' projects, and then we'll give Jorie a chance to share about hers. When each of our 4 fellows applied, they all had a seed of an idea for what they wanted to explore with the fellowship program. Their projects ranged from voter mobilization to using health information to facilitate conversations with your doctor. We had a range of students apply, everyone from education to pre-med. So our students really had a lot of different interests in how media literacy can connect with students. I'll note that only one of our students, Jorie, who's here today, was an education student, and that had implications for how we prepared the fellows, because we expected them to create lesson plans and develop age-appropriate materials, and they didn't all have that background. Some had a higher learning curve because they'd never seen a lesson plan template before and found it challenging to conceptualize a learning module. So we put lots of examples in our LMS Brightspace as we went along. So here's a preview so you can get a sense of what their projects are like. And I will note that there are QR codes that you can scan to get to each one's OER Commons page. So the first project I'll share was social media and mental health. This learning module focused on the effects of social media on mental health, intended for secondary ed students. This module was created for students who've grown up in the digital age, by a college student who also had a similar technological background while they were growing up. Students would come out of the module knowing more about the present state of mental health, how social media can exacerbate mental health concerns, and small realistic changes they could do to improve their social media habits. This module included slides, a lesson plan, an assessment Kahoot, a review video, and a habits worksheet. So there were several pieces included in that one. The second project was called Paging Dr. Google: How to Use Digital Health Information to Inform Conversations with Your Health Providers. For this module was designed not to dissuade students from using digital resources, but how to leverage them to have conversations with your healthcare provider, helping them to use tools to find reputable sources and responsibly use them in conversations. The learning module was divided up into 3 submodules, each about 20 to 30 minutes in length, and they were designed to be taught either in separate sessions or in one large workshop with several segments to it. There were lesson plans, slides included in this module. And the last one I'll share before Jorie shares with us about her project was media literacy, eating disorder information. So this module targeted secondary students again, who were more prone to be swayed or believe the media and its portrayals of what it is to be healthy. And specifically, it was to dive into eating disorder illiteracy and depict real life connections with how the media directs and indirectly affects the ways we think and believe. So when students finish this, the idea was that they'd be able to consume different types of media with a higher awareness of how both misinformation spreads, whether intentional or not, but also ways that the media can influence us in negative ways when it comes to our understanding of self. This module included a set of slides again, an infographic that students could interact with, and a full lesson plan for teachers to use.
So I chose this project based on my own interests from high school and current research interests. I'm chronically online, both through my own social media use and involvement in student journalism. So I wanted to create a resource for students like me that want to make a change in society. And social media is a great resource to start with, if used in an appropriate and professional way. So there were a couple learning objectives. Understanding the voter registration process. This first key point of my lesson was to ensure that students demonstrate a solid understanding of the voter registration process. Students can become aware of the eligibility requirements that need to be met in order to register and vote. And this is important to empower students to participate in the democratic process as responsible citizens. Next was combating misinformation online. In today's digital age, misinformation spreads rapidly, especially on social media platforms. My second goal was to equip students with the skills to recognize signs of misinformation, and I aim to teach them how to critically evaluate the information they come across online, whether that's news articles, social media posts, or any other content. And importantly, they will learn how to explain the responsible steps to take when they encounter misleading information. Lastly, I focused on lateral reading techniques, which is lateral reading involves stepping away from the web page or source to quickly fact check its content by searching for more reliable information. Students will be guided through the steps of lateral reading and will also evaluate its effectiveness in discerning the credibility of information. This skill is essential in an era where quick and accurate information assessment is crucial. So for the content of the project, this presentation is timely at any point in the year, but would especially be useful in the fall or near election cycles. When I was in high school, I was interested in the voting process fairly early on, but the process on how to actually vote was not really covered since only a few seniors are usually old enough to vote. When I presented this module, it was shortly after the Covenant shooting here in Nashville when students were ready to make change and had already been protesting. I focused on 2 Gen Z candidates that had recently run to emphasize that no one is too young or inexperienced to make change or be involved in politics. So as for the actual learning activities that we did, I selected 4 different articles across the political spectrum. These articles served almost as a case study for my project. As students read, I encouraged them to investigate any unfamiliar terms, any references to legislation, and the author or journalist background. These steps helped build contextualization and understanding. Once they completed reading, I provided questions to answer, such as the background of the journalist, any claims made in the article, investigate statistics, and etc. For a post-activity check-in, you can use any sort of quiz or activity to check for understanding. I opted for Kahoot, but this could be an exit ticket or a simple question and answer. Since this fellowship is based out of the library, I was able to gain both personal and professional skills. Before the fellowship, I hardly utilized resources offered by the library because I assumed the only resources available were physical books. But when I started this fellowship, I discovered the online resources and databases the library offered and used them both for the fellowship and also my other classes beyond. This fellowship was during my second year in school, but first year as a pre-service teacher. I appreciated the opportunity to engage with public school students in Nashville and create an open education resource that I can build off during the next few years as a developing teacher.
Thanks, Jorie. To close, we'd like to share one more student reflection. We appreciated that several students reflected on reaching beyond Vanderbilt's walls into the greater Nashville community. As this student reflects, although I'd initially thought that most library projects would be archival, I sincerely appreciated that this endeavor allowed me to engage with the Nashville community and create an open educational resource that could be implemented in many secondary education settings to educate and empower teams as digital consumers of health information. And finally, if you'd like to look more closely at any of the Fellows projects, the QR code on the screen will bring you to the final modules. We hope that you will take a look and utilize these student projects for whatever your own purposes are, remembering that they all have Creative Commons licenses. And if you have any questions or comments about this presentation, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at the addresses here on the screen. Thank you.